back to Formula One Bet. My name is Noah Mosley, and thank you so much for watching. If you haven't done so already, please like, comment, and subscribe down below. In this video, we will be previewing the odds for the 2024 Formula One Canadian Grand Prix weekend. So let's go ahead and let's get into it. Alrighty, starting off with a recap of the Monaco Grand Prix weekend from 2 weekends ago. Essentially, we did see Charles Leclerc finally fulfill his prophecy and secure that victory at his home Grand Prix. It was definitely great to see Charles finally get that, itch off of his back to finally capture that win and, break that curse. I also thought that it was pretty interesting going into the very first lap of the race. We had that huge wreck with the Haas's and also Sergio Perez. And I thought that caused a little bit of drama, but little did we know, a little bit further up the field, we had some controversy between Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly of Alpine. And so that had kind of sparked a lot of drama to go into these couple of weeks between the Monaco Grand Prix and the Canadian Grand Prix. And so that will definitely have an effect on the team's future moving forward, as Alpine has already announced that Esteban Ocon is out of the second driver's seat for Alpine for the 2025 season. And so I am really curious on seeing who will necessarily replace Esteban, as I had considered him to be the number one driver there on the team. But obviously, Pierre Gasly has kind of put together a lot of impressive performances for the team. And then also essentially, I think that with the progress that Pierre has made with the team, that he has kind of just found to be the more, calming of the two, and the one that kind of has the straighter head of the two as well. So I think it will be interesting to see who they have fill that second seat, whether it might be a return of Mick Schumacher or potentially their reserve driver, Jack Doohan, who seems to be very intelligent when it comes to the car itself. So it will be interesting to see how the rest of it plays out, but definitely some big news coming out of the Monaco Grand Prix. And some other news that had happened between the Monaco Grand Prix and the Canadian Grand Prix was Checo Perez actually did get a deal done with Red Bull for that seat going into next year and also 2026. So he was able to capture a 2-year agreement, which I think is right up Checo's alley, exactly what he was looking for. Now, necessarily when it comes to Red Bull, I don't necessarily think that this was the best strategy for them. I thought they had a lot of other potential, great drivers on the grid, and Checo has just shown to be very inconsistent. And I think that's an ultimate slap in the face to Yuki Tsunoda, as he has completely dominated Daniel Ricciardo majority of the season. And, he's shown that even in a B-level car, he can definitely still put up impressive performances and get into the points. And so I thought that, with Yuki being with, RB for so long and AlphaTauri before then, he had made his commitment to Red Bull to go ahead and secure his seat into the new regulations. And apparently they aren't seeing that step or that leap from Yuki as of yet. So they decided to stay with Checo, and we'll have to see what Yuki does with that information. I believe that this might be the step where he decides to get away from Red Bull, and he might look elsewhere to go ahead and get a new seat. So we'll keep an eye out and see what Yuki decides to do in his future. Now, with looking at the track layout for the Canadian Grand Prix, it's actually composed of 14 corners, and I think that this track layout is very similar to Imola, just in the regards that it has quite a bit of straights, a match with some low-speed corners, and those low-speed corners can provide for some pretty good overtaking spots. The main overtaking spot on the track would be possibly turn 10 into the major hairpin there, which, the cars have to go pretty slow in order to get around, and so provides for a pretty good overtaking spot if somebody wants to take a deep lunge into that corner. I believe Lando Norris had a lunge on his teammate Oscar Piastri last year into that turn 10 hairpin there, and so I think it'll be interesting to see what type of racing we'll get this year, knowing that we actually have quite a bit of competitive cars racing for the race win. So I think that the Canadian Grand Prix will be a pretty exciting weekend. So let's go ahead and let's get into our predictions for the Grand Prix weekend. Already, and who I have for my shot in the dark to take pole position for the Canadian Grand Prix is Charles Leclerc. Now, Charles is sitting at plus 600 odds over on FanDuel, and I believe that Charles could easily carry over the momentum from his Monaco win over to the Canadian Grand Prix. I think that he has shown that he is back to having his pure qualifying pace, and just as long as Charles can weed out all of the mental mistakes, he can show that he has the pace in the car, and I thought that was a very impressive pole position in Monaco. With a lot of contending teams and the margins just being so close, and so it's very easy to predict that Charles could carry over this performance into Canada moving forward. So I would say go ahead and lock him in as your shot in the dark. Alrighty, and who I have for my potential lock to take pole position is Lando Norris. Now, Lando is sitting at plus 950 odds over on FanDuel, and I think that this is where McLaren comes back and they show Ferrari, hey, last couple weeks were gimmick. We are showing that we are probably the top contending team to battle Red Bull. And I think that, in the street tracks, it's not necessarily McLaren's strength. And I think that in a lot of these, typical traditional style racetracks, it's more suited to McLaren's car. And, I just don't think that they are necessarily predicting being as strong, but I think that, their car will suit well around the track. And so I think that Lando, has had a very impressive year. Let alone, I think that he could easily put it on pole position if he has, that great lap that he's looking for. So go ahead and put him in as your potential lock to take pole position. And who I have for my best bet to take pole position for the Canadian Grand Prix is Oscar Piastri. Now, Oscar is sitting at plus 1,200 odds over on BetESPN, and I think that this is Oscar's weekend. Oscar has kind of just sitting back behind, having a little bit of performance here and there, but hasn't really been able to put it all together for one whole weekend. I think that this is where he makes that step. I think that he will, make a statement going into this weekend, especially if McLaren's car is as strong as I'm anticipating it to be. And I think that, Oscar could easily throw it on pole and shock everybody. But it's not necessarily shocking in my eyes, just because I know that he has that ability. He was, in the top 5 contending race drivers all last year when it came to pole position. I shouldn't say all last year. I should say around the second half of the year, because McLaren absolutely brought out an embarrassment of a car. But with that being said, Oscar is easily shown that he can put up the performances to hang up there, and I think that this is the weekend that he gets it done. So go ahead and lock him in as your best bet to take pole position. And who I have for my shot in the dark to win the Canadian Grand Prix is Oscar Piastri. Now, Oscar is sitting at plus 1,800 odds over on DraftKings, and the reason why I'm matching with Oscar here is I think that, if he does stick it on pole position, he could easily command the race. And I think that he is an aggressive enough driver to make sure that he doesn't give himself away to let a race victory slip by. Also, with his performances back in F2 and F3, he's shown that he can win championships, he can win races, and I believe he knows how to manage out in front as well. And so that that's just where my prediction is coming from for him. If he does not stick it on pole, I think it would be difficult for him to, overtake to win the race. But with that being said, I'm just predicting it to be his weekend. So hopefully Oscar can come through and produce those results. So lock him in as your shot in the dark. And who I have for my potential lock to win the Canadian Grand Prix is Carlos Sainz. Now, Carlos is sitting at plus 2,500 odds over on Bet365, FanDuel, and ESPN Bet. And honestly, I think that this is pretty disrespectful just because Carlos is a lot more of a reputable driver than what these odds are showing. And honestly, I think that Carlos definitely has the pace advantage when it comes to race pace against Charles. I will give Charles that he has the quality pace advantage over Carlos, but I would say, when it comes to a 50, 60, 70 lap race, I'm going to go with Carlos just because I think he has that overall consistency. Now, not saying that Charles has a absolute terrible race pace. I just don't think that it's matched with Carlos's experience that he has. And so I think that Carlos could easily win the race, even if he's not in the top three when it comes to qualifying. And so I think that he could easily get his elbows out and make something happen to win the race because he still is looking for a seat for next year just because he hasn't made a commitment yet to Stake, aka Audi. And we saw the results when it comes to Red Bull's second seat. And so I imagine an announcement will be coming pretty soon in regards to Mercedes' second seat. So time's running out for Carlos, and he needs to keep putting up these impressive performances to get a seat going into next year. So go ahead and lock him in as your potential lock to win the Canadian Grand Prix. And who I have for my best bet to win the Canadian Grand Prix is Max Verstappen. Now, Max is sitting at minus 185 odds over on BetMGM, and I think that after such a boring race that Max had in Monaco, I think he'll want to come back here at the Canadian Grand Prix stronger than ever, especially since he didn't win that race and he didn't really get any overtaking opportunities presented to him. And I will say that's mostly due to the track and, the Formula One cars just being way too large around there. And this track definitely provides for some overtaking opportunities. So even if Max doesn't hit that pole position, I think he'll be able to make up some positions within the race itself. And so with that being said, I think that Red Bull have already came out and said that they're not anticipating being that strong here at the circuit. But when you have the best Formula One driver on the grid driving for you, I don't think that necessarily matters. I think it all comes down to just making sure that he is comfortable with that car. And there might be some slight issues, but eventually Max will be able to understand them and get over them throughout the race weekend, starting in the very first practice session all the way to the Grand Prix. So I would say lock him in as your best bet to win the Canadian Grand Prix. So we're going to have a special guest prediction from my lovely daughter, Cecilia. All right, Cece, out of all of the drivers, which one do you think is going to win the race?
He won.
Talking to this one. Talking to that.
He's going to race like that.
Like that? Okay, so can you say, go, Lando, go.
Go, Lando, go.
Go, Lando,
go.
Go,
Lando, go.
So do you think the red car, the blue car, or the orange car is going to win? Here. Do you think the blue car, the orange car, or the red car is going to win?
The orange car.
The orange car. Yep. Yep. That's all I had for the Canadian Grand Prix weekend. Just be sure to tune in to the race this weekend. I think it will be decently exciting, and hopefully we might get a couple of surprises. But looking forward, we do have the Spanish Grand Prix coming up, and I think that this is probably one of my favorite tracks on the calendar, just because they solely did remove that last chicane into the last corner and made it more into an open high-speed corner. And I think that it just fits so well to the track and provides for a lot better racing with that small chicane in there. And so I think that it should be a great Grand Prix looking ahead. But looking at this weekend, we have the Canadian Grand Prix. So hopefully you tune in. If you haven't done so already, please like, comment, and subscribe down below. And as always, thanks for watching and happy racing.